To me, my life is a sort of evolving storehouse of memories, of experiences. And this is something that, of course, I experienced as a child and has got ingrained in me as who I am and my personality. I was born in a family of artists. My mother, who was my guru, my mother, and also my best friend and confidant. I remember one day she came home very excited and said, "Guess what? The Bolshoi Ballet is coming to Delhi." And my mother had lived in Russia, studied choreography there, as the first and only Indian to have done it at that point, when it was still the Soviet Union, and her choreography course was an offshoot of that experience of hers, tailored for the contemporary Indian dancer. So I said, "Yeah, so Bolshoi Ballet is coming." She said, "Don't you see the Bolshoi Ballet is coming?" And I knew that meant the ballerinas would come home and all that. And then she said something that completely knocked me off for that moment. She said, tomorrow night is the Swan Lake performance and we must go." So I said, "Mom, but I have the next day is my math exam and I hated, still do math." But she said, "So?" I said, "No, but I have to study through the night, right? I mean, how can I watch the Bolshoi Ballet?" And so she tried to bribe me and said, "See, I'll take you to Bengali market for chaat and whatever else that mattered to a teenager in those days." Um, Eventually, she said something to me which has remained with me. And that was, she said, "You know what? Maybe you'll do badly in your math exam. Maybe you may not fail, but you might do very badly. You might not get those marks that you want to. But you may not see the Bolshoi Ballet as it is now ever again. Because in a few months or a few years, there will be no Soviet Union. And you will not see this quality. You will not see it with these sort of prima donnas in it. This experience will not come back for you." And so I went, at first grudgingly, and I was, of course, watching this spectacular production, which enriched me. I came back, and at that point, the relevance of it did not hit me as it does now. True enough, there was no Soviet Union. This was the time of huge change, and that stayed with me. I still remember, even later, as I grew up and I had my first major heartbreak, and I was so full of this sort of emotion at that point. And now, when you look back, it's quite hilarious. And I remember my mother's first reaction was, "Madhu, your Abhinay has improved." And I said, and I was like, "What are you saying, Ma?" And she said, "Yeah, how can you portray Sanjog if you haven't been through Viyog? How do you portray, how do you express a meeting of two lovers if you haven't been through separation yourself?" So to me, experiencing something will always take precedence over a bank account, because I am, as I said, an evolving storehouse of my experiences and eventually the memories. Recently, I lost my mother, and I was completely, it was like a deafening grief. And although people would say, have the humility to know you can't control everything in your life, or there is a higher choreography in place, or I heard the medical sort of import of the whole situation about how she would have suffered and she went standing and that's how she should have gone, etc. What really worked for me is a dear friend of mine who's a management professional but is also a Buddhist. And he called me and said, "Yes, the soul has to find a way of leaving the body, and you heard all that, but remember, consciousness doesn't disappear." So I said, "What are you saying?" And he said, "A person's experiences, their emotions, their qualities, their memories, how can they disappear with that person? Physically, first of all, they're not tangible. Can they disappear? So consciousness remains. Your mother's consciousness will come back to places she's familiar with, and that gave her a sense of joy and purpose. And this this explanation is something that I hold on to, and it works for me. In my life, I have never really saved money. I have not thought twice before buying expensive books or music, or jumping off a plane at 11,000 feet to try my skydiving experience or to get a tattoo or two done. I would any day choose that to just storing and hoarding things that are probably expected of one person. Um, that's who I am, my experiences, my memories.